Hello. Today we are going to discuss May 2019 Management Accounting paper at the operational level. So I'll first read the instructions given to the candidates. Total time allowed is 3 hours and 15 minutes with a 15 minutes reading time. This paper is for 100 marks, consists of 2 parts. In part 1, you get 20 multiple choice questions. And in part 2, there are 4 essay type questions. All questions are compulsory. Answers must be written in English language and each answer to begin on a separate page in the answer booklet. So I'll go to part 1 of this paper where you have to answer all questions. So it says for questions 1 to 20, select the most appropriate answer and write against the question number in the answer booklet. So in your answer booklet, for question number 1, there will be 20 question numbers from 1.1 to 1.20. Against each question number, to write the answer out of the given answers. So 1.1, which of the following statements better describes the role of management accounting? Management accounting facilitates the information needs of both internal and external stakeholders of entity. Management accounting provides only forecasted information. Management accounting information is prepared in compliance with accounting standards and legislation. Management accounting information addresses managerial needs. So as we know, management accounting information addresses managerial needs. So the correct answer is answer D. Which of the following statements describe target costing? A, it is about calculating cost to set a price. It is about pooling overheads for determining product cost. It is about reducing cost to a target cost, which is calculated by subtracting the desired profit from the potential price. It identifies different markets for a product and then sells same product at different prices in each market. So the correct answer, or the most appropriate answer, is answer C, because target cost is a cost calculation where we deduct desired profit from the potential price. So the correct answer is answer C. 1.3, prime cost is comprised of A, production overheads plus direct material and labor cost. First of all, prime cost is another name for direct cost. So answer A is production overheads plus direct material and labor cost. We know that is not the correct answer. Answer B, direct labor cost plus production overhead. Again, overheads are included, overheads are direct cost. So that is also not the correct answer. Answer C, direct materials cost, direct labor cost, and other direct costs, all are direct costs. So answer C is the correct answer for 1.3. Answer 4 also I will read. Material cost plus production overheads. Again, overheads are included. So therefore, answer D is not the correct answer. For 1.3, the correct answer is answer C. 1.4. The following costs arise in relation to production of a new product: research and development cost, design cost, testing cost, advertising cost, production cost. The question is about, in calculating the life cycle cost of the product, which of the above items would be excluded? So the cost excluded when you calculate the life cycle cost is the advertising cost. So the correct answer is answer C, which says number 4. So for 1.4, the correct answer is C. The wages of machine operators in converting materials into finished goods. So the wages cost of operators who are involved in converting materials into finished goods, we call as direct labor. So the correct answer is B. Contribution margin is calculated as sales revenue less variable cost of goods sold, sales revenue less gross profit, sales revenue less variable cost of goods sold, and selling and administrative expenses, sales revenue less manufacturing margin. We know contribution margin is the difference between sales revenue and the variable cost. So the correct answer is answer A. The most appropriate basis of apportioning the rent would be value of assets, number of employees, area of each department, equally amongst all departments. We know the answer for this. When we apportion rent among different departments, we apportion that based on the area of each department. So the correct answer is answer C. A costing system is defined to be a process that enables determining the estimated cost of product. Which of the following is related to above definition? So the costing system, which enables you to calculate the total estimated cost of a product, is absorption costing out of the 4 answers. Therefore, the correct answer is answer A. It is not life cycle costing, it is not target costing, it is not throughput accounting. The costing system which helps you to calculate the total cost is absorption costing. 1.9. An activity-based cost system does not benefit organizations in job order costing, process costing, historical costing, standard costing. So an activity-based cost system does not benefit. If you have an activity-based costing system, a benefit that you are not getting is historical costing. So for 1.9, the correct answer is answer C. It is not a benefit that we get because of activity-based costing. 1.10. Equivalent units of the stock of work in progress at the beginning and end of the year are 2,500 and 5,000 respectively. Work completed during the year is 3,800. Therefore, equivalent units of the total production. So basically they are saying work in progress in terms of equivalent units, 2,500 at the beginning and 5,000 at the end, whereas work completed during the year is 3,800. So how do we calculate the equivalent units of production? So to calculate the equivalent units of production, what we do is, for the opening WIP in equivalent units, we add the work completed, that is, we are adding 3,800 to 2,500, and we are deducting the equivalent units in the closing WIP, which is 5,000. So equivalent units of total production will be 1,300, or the correct answer would be answer C. I can show you the work in here. So for 1.10, here you can see what I am explaining now. Equivalent units of opening WIP 2,500. In other words, opening WIP in terms of completed units 2,500, completed units 3,800. So here I can take a subtotal by adding these to 6,300. Then equivalent units in the closing WIP 5,000. Therefore, equivalent units of output is 1,300. That is difference between this 6,300, which is the sum of the previous two figures, minus the equivalent units of closing WIP. So the correct answer for 1.10 is answer C, or 1,300 units. Now I can again go back to the paper. 111. Peacock company uses a job order costing system. Manufacturing overhead is assigned to work in process using a predetermined overhead rate. Now it is very important here. Overheads are assigned. During the current month, the company's transactions included the following: direct materials issued to production 360, indirect materials 32,000, direct labor cost incurred 428,000, manufacturing overhead assigned 452,000. And manufacturing overhead incurred 500,000. The company had no beginning or ending inventories, which means the output they are selling. In other words, they don't keep any inventory. All the units that they are manufacturing, they are selling during the same period. So the question is, what is the cost of goods manufactured? Now, what you need to understand here is, this company is assigning manufacturing overheads. So therefore, although we have two figures here for manufacturing overheads, one for assigned 452,000 and the other one for incurred 500,000. Here we need to take the assigned manufacturing overhead figure of 452,000. So we can work out 1.11 here. It wants us to calculate the total cost. We know total cost is the summation of direct cost and the overheads, but here the overheads have to be assigned. In other words, we should not take the actual overhead incurred, but we have to take the overheads assigned figure. So based on the information given in the question, direct materials 360,000, direct materials 360,000. Indirect materials I am not going to take because indirect materials are anyway manufacturing overheads. So direct labor 428,000. Direct labor 428,000. And I am taking manufacturing overheads assigned. Manufacturing overheads assigned, which is 452,000. So I'm not taking manufacturing overheads incurred and also indirect materials. So manufacturing overheads assigned 452,000. Now if I take the total of these three, I can get the total of the manufacturing cost, which is 1,240,000. So out of the four answers given, the accurate answer is answer C. So for 1.11, the accurate answer is answer C. 1.12, which of the following is a true statement regarding joint cost? A, joint cost are easily traced to individual products. B, the primary reason for allocating joint cost is determine whether the product should be sold immediately or processed further. The primary reason for allocating joint cost is for inventory valuation and pricing. Joint costs consist only overheads. So we know what joint costs are. Joint costs are the common costs incurred for more than one product. Why we have to calculate joint cost and why we have to split joint cost among different products is for inventory valuation and also for pricing. So out of the four answers, the correct answer here is answer C. The primary reason for allocating joint cost is for inventory valuation and for pricing. So now I can move into 1.13. The product has selling price of 10 and a marginal cost of 5. So we know the contribution is 5 rupees. Sales and fixed cost for March are, so sales is 100,000, fixed cost 20,000. What is the break-even sales quantity? So I can work out here. 1.13. Selling price 10, marginal cost 5. So I can directly write here contribution per unit is 5 rupees. Fixed cost is 20,000 rupees. Therefore, the break-even quantity would be 20,000 rupees fixed cost divided by contribution of 5 rupees. Break-even quantity is 4,000. So the correct answer for 1.13 is answer D. 1.14. A department makes a product which gives a contribution of 1,000 rupees per unit and takes 20 machine hours per unit. A component used in this product with a marginal cost of 300 rupees, taking 5 hours of machine time, could be purchased from an external supplier. So it says there is a particular product which gives a contribution of 1,000 rupees and it takes 20 machine hours per 1 unit. There's a particular component which is included in this product with a marginal cost of 300 rupees. In other words, the manufacturing cost of that component is 300 rupees and it takes 5 hours of machine time. We are told it can be purchased from an external supplier. The department is working at full capacity. What is the maximum price that the company will pay to buy the component from the external supplier? So based on this situation, given this scenario, the examiner is asking if there's a particular component which costs 300 rupees to manufacture by taking 5 machine hours, what is the maximum price the company can pay in order to buy this component from an outside party? So let's see how this question can be done. So in 1.14, we are told the company currently makes a contribution of 1,000 rupees. Current contribution per unit, 1,000 rupees. And it takes 20 machine hours. Number of machine hours, 20. Therefore, we can calculate contribution per machine hour. Contribution per machine hour, that is 1,000 divided by 20. We are told if the component is purchased from an outside party, it can be purchased for 300 rupees. We are told if the component is manufactured internally, manufacturing cost is 300 rupees. I can say here, manufacturing cost of the component. Manufacturing cost of the component 300 rupees. So if the component is manufactured, the company is incurring 300 rupees. The component requires 5 machine hours. I can say machine hours saved if the component is purchased. I will first work out the question. If you purchase the component rather than manufacturing, you can save 5 machine hours. Machine hours saved if the component is purchased, 5 machine hours. So since you are saving 5 machine hours, you can generate an additional contribution using those 5 hours. So I can say here additional contribution for 5 hours. We know the product is giving a contribution of 50 rupees per machine hour. If the component is purchased from outside, we are saving 5 machine hours. Those 5 machine hours we can use to manufacture the product. And if we use those 5 machine hours to manufacture the product, then for those 5 machine hours, we can generate an additional contribution of 250 rupees. I'll repeat that. From the normal product of the company, the current contribution is 1000. It takes 20 machine hours. So for 1 machine hour, contribution is 50 rupees. There's a particular component which the company can purchase from outside, but it is currently manufactured. So the manufacturing cost currently is 300. If the component is purchased from outside, you can save 5 machine hours, which you can then use to manufacture the main product. So if you use those 5 hours to manufacture the main product, for those 5 hours, you can generate an additional contribution of 250 rupees. That is this. Therefore, the maximum price the company can pay to purchase the component. Maximum price the company can pay to purchase the component is its internal manufacturing cost plus the additional contribution that it results in from the main product. So when both are added together, the maximum price the company can pay to purchase the component is 550 rupees. I'll explain that again. So basically what this says is, from the main product, we generate a contribution of 1000, and the main product requires 20 machine hours. So the contribution per 1 machine hour is 50. In the main product, there's a component which costs 300 rupees currently to manufacture, and it requires 5 machine hours. So if you are purchasing this component from outside, we are freeing 5 machine hours. So by freeing those 5 machine hours from the main product, we can generate an additional contribution of 250. That is, at the rate of 50 rupees, per machine hour, we are saving 5 machine hours. So we can generate an additional contribution for those 5 hours from the main product, 250. Internal manufacturing cost of the component is 300. So if you are purchasing from outside, the maximum price that we can pay will be 550. So the correct answer out of the 4 answers given is answer C. Then we can go to question number 15, 115. A learning curve describes the increase in number of units produced per unit time as the total number of units produced increases. The amount of production time per unit as the total number of units produced increases. The rate at which an organization acquires new information, or the increase in production time as the total number of units produced increases. So the correct answer which describes learning curve out of the 4 answers given is answer B, which says the amount of production time per unit as the total number of units produced increases. In other words, it tells us when the production volume increases, the amount of time from 1 unit. Correct answer is answer B. Limiting factor analysis refers to, first answer, a situation where a business attempts to maximize contribution subject to resource constraint. A situation where a business attempts to substitute scarce resources to increase production. A situation where a business produces products that use the smallest amount of scarce resources. A situation where a business tries to minimize the cost. Out of the 4 answers given, the correct answer would be answer A, which says a situation where a business attempts to maximize contribution subject to resource constraints. So of course, when there's a resource constraint in limiting factor analysis, what we are trying to do is we are trying to maximize the contribution or the profits using the limiting factor. So the correct answer is answer A. 1.17. A company requires 2,600 units for sale. The opening and closing stocks are planned to be 1,400 and 1,800. What is the needed quantity of production to satisfy sales requirements? So it's a simple question. The company requires to sell 2,600. Opening stock is 1,400. Closing stock is 1,800. And we have to calculate the production requirement. So what we can do is, I will work out, even though it is a very simple requirement. 117. Opening stock 1,400. Closing stock is 1,800. The sales volume is 2,600. It is asking about the production volume. Production volume. That will be sales volume plus closing stock minus the opening stock. So production volume would be 3,000. Out of the 4 answers given, the correct answer would be answer C. So now we can move into 1.18. The standard cost of a unit of product requires 2 hours of direct labor paid at 7.5 per hour. The company's adverse labor rate variance for the period is 80 rupees. The favorable efficiency variance was 30 rupees. If 250 units are produced, the examiner is asking how much is the actual labor hours. So let's see how we can do this question. 1.18. Standard labor hours per unit is 2 hours. Standard labor hours. Standard labor hours per unit 2. Standard labor rate per hour 750. Standard labor rate per hour 750. Therefore, we can calculate standard labor cost per 1 unit. Standard labor cost per unit will be 2 hours into 750. So standard labor cost per 1 unit is 15. So now we are told there's an adverse labor rate variance 80 and a favorable efficiency variance of 30. Labor rate variance is 30 adverse, and efficiency variance, labor efficiency, variance is, sorry, the other way, labor rate variance is 80 adverse. This is 80. Labor rate variance is 80 adverse. Efficiency variance is 30 favorable. Then we are told actual output is 250 units. Actual output, I have just repeated the information given in the question. Actual output is 250. The examiner is asking, or the question is about actual labor hours. labor hours. So this is how we are going to answer this question. To calculate the actual labor hours here, we can make use of the labor variance, which says it is 30 favorable. So I can write the formula for the efficiency variance. Labor efficiency variance, that would be standard hours, difference between, we'll say, actual hours and the standard hours into standard labor rate per hour. So actual hours is what we don't know. We can calculate the standard hours. So we know the standard hours for 1 unit 2. Our actual output is 250. So for the actual output of 250, standard hours is 500. We have a favorable efficiency variance, which means actual hours have to be less than 500. So I will keep that. So the difference between standard hours and actual hours, we might get a difference here that we don't know yet. Difference between the standard hours and actual hours, we multiply by standard rate per hour. So standard rate per hour is 7 rupees and 50 cents, that we know. So when we multiply the difference by 7 rupees and 50 cents, we get the favorable efficiency variance. Favorable efficiency variance, which is 30. So in order to have a favorable efficiency variance of 30, using a standard labor rate of 7 rupees and 50 cents, here the difference should be 4 hours. In other words, actual hours should be 4 hours less than the standard hours. So the actual hours should be 496 hours. The correct answer out of the 4 answers given, you can see answer A. Answer A says 496 hours. So from our calculation also you can see actual hours have to be 496 hours using the efficiency variance. So I'll explain that again. Efficiency variance, how do we calculate? It is the difference between actual hours and the standard hours into standard labor rate per hour. So standard labor hours per 1 unit, we know 2 hours. We know the actual output 250. Therefore, we can calculate the standard hours for the actual output, 2 hours into 250, 500 hours. Actual hours is what we have to calculate. So at that time, although I have put the figure here, at that time I did not know the figure. Difference is the difference between standard hours and actual hours, but I know since the efficiency variance is a favorable variance, actual hours have to be less than the standard hours. So the difference we are multiplying by standard labor rate per hour in order to get the efficiency variance. Standard labor rate per hour is 7 rupees and 50 cents. Efficiency variance is 30 favorable. So since the efficiency variance is 30 favorable, difference have to be 4. In other words, this difference should be actual hours being 4 hours less than the standard hours. So since the standard hours are 500, actual hours have to be 496 hours. In other words, 4 hours less than the standard hours. So the correct answer out of the 4 answers provided is answer A. Sustainability management accounting. Sustainability management accounting is A, the management of environmental and economic performance through the development and implementation of appropriate environment related accounting systems and practices. Environmental accounting, reporting environmental issues, reporting and controlling state sector accounts. So out of the 4 answers given, the most appropriate answer is answer A. In other words, sustainability accounting is the management of environmental and economic performances through the development and implementation of appropriate environment related accounting systems and practices. So the correct answer is answer A. Then in 1.20, it is asking in a JIT production system, production overhead is authorized when an authorization is obtained from a downstream operation. The production worker is at the workstation. An authorization is obtained from an upstream operation. The team leader is ready. So basically, in a JIT system, we do everything on orders. In other words, we don't manufacture unless there is an order. So out of the 4 answers given, the answer which describes a JIT production system is the answer A. In other words, in a JIT system, production operation is authorized when the authorization is obtained from a downstream operation. In other words, from an operation that has happened before, if you get the approval, then of course, production process is started. So the correct answer for 1.20 is answer A. So with that, we complete multiple choice questions in May 2019 management accounting paper. There were 20 questions carrying 2 marks each. So which means with question number 1, we have now completed 40% of the question paper. Okay, now we can move into question number 2. Question number 2 says, the product of a company passes through three distinct processes. The following information is obtained from the accounts for the month ending January 31st, 2019. So there are 3 processes. Process A, direct material cost is 7,800, direct wages 6,000, production overhead 6,000. Process B, again we are given direct material cost, direct wages, overheads, and also we are given the same information for process C. Then 3,000 units at 3 rupees each were introduced to process A. There was no stock of materials or work in progress. The output of each process passes directly to the next process and finally to finished stock account. So the following additional data are obtained. In process A, output is 2,850. Percentage of normal loss to input 5%. Value of scrap materials 2 rupees. Process B, output is 2,520. Percentage of normal loss to input 10%. Value of scrap 4 rupees per unit. In process C, output 2,250, which is the final process. Percentage of normal loss to input 15%. Value of scrap per unit is 5 rupees. So you are required to prepare process account, prepare normal loss account, and prepare abnormal gain or loss account. It is a complete process costing question. So let's see how to do this question. I'll start this question in a separate Excel sheet. Question number 2. There are 3 processes. So for each process, we need to prepare a process account. So I will first draw the process account here. In the process account, there are 2 sides, as you know. So description, units, and the value. So I can repeat the same 3 columns on the other side. So I'll format the account and thereafter I can copy that. So let's say this is process A. So I can copy and paste the same process account in order for processes B and C. So process B and also process C. So let me start with process A. So we are told the company inputs 3,000 units at 3 rupees into process A. I can say input 3,000 units. Value would be at the rate of 3 rupees, 9,000 rupees. Then it says Output of A is 2850. So I can write here output of A is 2850. I will value it later. There's a normal loss. So normal loss calculations I will do here. Normal loss calculations. In process A, that will be, we are told the normal loss in process A is 5% of the input. So 5% of the input. Input in process A is 3000. So 5% of input. I can get the value here. 150. So normal loss is 150. So you can see from the balancing of process A account to the process A, we input 3000 units of materials. Normal loss is 150 and we are getting an output of 2850, which means there is no abnormal loss or abnormal gain in process A. Output in process A is transferred to process B. So I can write here output, we are transferring to process B. I can say transferred to B. Right. So in process A, this is the only cost of materials. There are no other cost. So I can complete the process account for process A. Volume is balancing on both sides 3000. Output and normal loss volumes. Output is 2850 and the normal loss is 150. The total of those two is equal to 3000, which is the input volume. So in process A, normal loss value would be the scrap value of normal loss, that is 150 units into 2 rupees, 300. So I can put that value here. So which means I can balance process A now. The value of output transferred to process B would be 8700, which is the difference between materials value input to process A and the value of normal loss. So the value of output transferred to process B is 8700. So with that we complete process A. Now I can go to process B. Here I can say transferred from A. Transferred from process A. We are transferring 2850 units at a value of 8700. There are no added materials in process B. So I can calculate the normal loss in process B. Normal loss in process B, that is 10% from the input. 10% from the input. So the input in process B is 2850. I can get the value here. 10% from 2850. Normal loss in process B is 285. I can say normal loss in process B 285 units. Then I can get the output. Output, or I can directly say transferred to process C. Transferred to C would be the difference between the input quantity 2850 and the normal loss 2565. 2565. Before that, there's a small correction here. In each of the process accounts, in addition to the input materials, there are some other costs also which I did not see earlier. Apologies for that. So in process A, the other costs are direct materials, direct wages. I will share the screen with you. In process A, other costs are direct materials, direct wages and production overheads. For direct material cost, in addition to what was introduced, other direct materials are 7,800, direct wages 6,000 and production overhead 6,000. So I can come to this again. In addition to the input, we have additional direct materials. I will say direct DM, direct materials. Then we have direct wages and also reduction overheads. So additional direct materials 7,800. There are no quantities, only the values. Additional direct materials 7,800, direct wages 6,000, and overheads another 6,000. So this total will now change. Total in the debit side will be 28,800. Therefore, the value of output transferred to process B would be 28,500. So that gets automatically adjusted here. Value of input coming from process A would be 28,500. In process B also there are some additional costs. I will again share the screen with you. In process B also there are some additional costs, direct materials, direct wages, production overheads. So direct materials, direct wages, production overheads. I can now put the values. 5,940 here. $9,000 and 9,000. So in process B, normal loss is 10% of input, that is 285. Output transferred to process C, I'll again share the screen with you. Output transferred to process C is 2,520. Output transfer to process C is 2,520, which means there's an abnormal loss of 45 in process B. Abnormal loss is 45. I'll work out here. In process B, normal loss is 285. Input is 2,850. Therefore, expected output is 2,850 minus 285, 2,565. But the actual output, which is transferred to process C, is 2,520. Therefore, there's an abnormal loss which is more than the normal loss of 45 units. It is the difference between the expected output and the actual output. We are expecting 2,565 after the normal loss, but we are ending up with 2,520, which means there's an abnormal loss of 45 units. So this 45 units is arriving like this. Now we can value. So the value of normal loss, we are told in process B, normal losses can be sold at 4 rupees. Value of normal loss would be 285 into 4 rupees, 1,140. So in process B, now we need to calculate cost per unit, cost per expected unit, cost per expected unit. What we can do is, we can take the subtotal here. So in process B, the total in the debit side is 52,440, that is the value, and the quantity is 2,840. So I can put the same values on the other side, credit side. So after deducting the normal loss, I can say expected cost for the expected output. That is 52,440 minus 1,140. So the expected cost for the expected output, expected cost for the expected output 51,300. Our expected volume is the difference between input volume and the normal loss, 2,565. So I can now calculate cost per unit in process B. That is 51,300 divided by 2,565. So cost per unit in process B is exactly 20 rupees. So I'll explain that working again. In order to calculate the cost per unit in process B, what we have to do is we have to first take the expected cost for the expected output. So for that, we first take the total in the debit side. Total in the debit side is 52,440. From that, when we deduct the struck value of the normal loss, our expected cost for the expected output is 51,300. You can see it is the difference between 52,440 and the 1,140. So expected cost for the expected output 51,300. Expected volume, that is the input quantity and the normal loss is 2,565. Input quantity is 2,850. Normal loss is 285. Therefore, expected volume is 2,565. So for the expected volume of 2,565, expected cost is 51,300. Therefore, cost per 1 unit is 20 rupees. Based on this cost per 1 unit, we can value both output, which is transferred to process C, as well as abnormal loss. So what we do is, we first value the output transferred to C, that is 2,520 into 20 rupees. Then we can value abnormal loss 45 units into 20 rupees. Now as you can see, in both sides, in the debit side as well as in the credit side, both the units as well as values are now tallying. Now I can move into process C. So in process C, input would be the output transferred from process B. So I can say here, transferred from B. Transferred from B, 2,520 units and 50,400 is the value. So like I did for other two processes, I can put additional cost in process C. There is a direct material cost of 8,886. I can say direct material cost 8,886. Then there is a direct labor or direct wages cost of 12,000 and production overheads cost of another 12,000. So for process C also, first I can calculate the normal loss. Normal loss in process C. Normal loss percentage in process C is 15% from input. So 15% from the input, that is 2,520. So I can work out the value here. 15% from 2,520. So normal loss is 378. Normal loss units 378. Therefore, I can calculate the expected volume in process C or expected output. Since process C is the last process, we can directly calculate the expected output now. Expected output would be input. We know the input 2,520 and the normal loss 378. So expected output is 2142 units. However, as per the details given in the question, actual output is 2250. Actual output 2250. Therefore, in this case, we have an abnormal gain. Abnormal gain. In other words, we are generating more good production volume than what we are expecting. So the abnormal gain quantity would be the difference between the actual output and the expected output, 108 units. Abnormal gain is 108 units. The abnormal gain will come to the debit side of the process account. Abnormal gain 108 units. So let's see how to value process C now. So we can now value the normal loss. In process C, scrap value of normal loss is 5 rupees. Therefore, 378 we can multiply by 5. So scrap value of normal loss is 1890. So therefore, we can calculate expected cost of expected output. Expected cost of expected output. Like we had done in process B, I can do the same here. I can get the subtotals in the debit side. Debit side volume will be 2628. Debit side value would be 83,286. And from 83,286, which is the total in the debit side, I can deduct scrap value of the normal loss 1890. So I get the expected cost of expected output 81,396. Expected volume already we have calculated 2142. So therefore I can calculate cost per unit in process C. Cost per unit 81,396 divided by 2142. So the cost per 1 unit in process C is 38 rupees. Now I can complete process C account. Output. This is the final output. This is transferred to finished good account. Finished good account. We can say finished good account. So output is 2,520. Sorry, output is 2,250. It is given here 2,250. So this output we are valuing at 38 rupees, which is the cost per unit. Similarly, abnormal gain also we are valuing at same cost per unit, which is 38. Abnormal gain also I can value at the same cost per unit, 38, 108 into 38. So there's a small issue here. The circular reference is coming since I have taken the debit side total for the calculation of the unit cost. So therefore what I can do is I can value output of 2,250. That doesn't change anything. So it is a problem which is occurring in Excel because of the circular reference. So what I will do is, without linking the value to the cost per unit, I will multiply directly by 38 rupees, which is the cost per unit. What I will do is output I will value at 38 rupees. Abnormal gain also I will value at 38 rupees without linking to the cell. So now as you can see, in both sides, volume is 2,628 and the value is 87,390. So with this, we complete 2.1 of question number 2, which is the 3 process accounts: process A, process B, and process C. So now let's move into 2.2 of the question, which is preparing the normal loss account. So this is 2.1. We'll now move into 2.2, which is the normal loss account. So I can copy the account format from this. So account name is normal loss. I'll remove all these values. Right, now in the normal loss account, there are certain entries coming from the process account. As you can see, normal loss in each of the process account we have credited. So the respective debit entry goes to normal loss account. So I can say here, from process A and B and C, we are getting entries to the debit of the normal loss account. Process C. So from process A account, normal loss is 150 units. From process B, normal loss is 285. And from process C, normal loss is 378 units. So coming to the values, in process A, normal loss value is 300. In process B, normal loss value is 1140. And in process C, normal loss value is 1890. Now I can go to the credit side of the normal loss account, which is the amount that we realize when we sell these units in practice. In other words, we have 150 normal loss units. When we sell these units, we realize a certain amount of cash. So for that, the double entry is cash account or bank account debit, normal loss account credit. So what I will do here is, against each normal loss balance from each process account, I will put the amount realized from selling. So bank account debit and the normal loss account. So in front of process A, normal loss of 150, I can say by selling 150, we are realizing 3,000. We are realizing 300. That is debited to the bank account. Same I can do for process B. So, because in process B there's an abnormal loss, but the normal loss is anyway there. So there is a normal loss units of 285. By selling, we can realize 1140. So we debit the bank account and credit the normal loss account. But in process C, we have to be careful, because even though the normal loss is 378, there's an abnormal gain in process C. Therefore, the actual loss in process C is 270. I can work out here. Normal loss in process C, 378. However, there's an abnormal gain of 108. Abnormal gain of 108. Therefore, actual loss is 270. Therefore, we are realizing the sales value for 270 only. Although we have taken normal loss as 378, the actual loss is 270 since there's an abnormal gain of 108. Therefore, in the normal loss account, we can credit only the scrap value for 270 and we debit the bank account. Each scrap value in process C, we can sell for 5 rupees. So by selling 270, we can realize 1,350. Abnormal gain, the sales value of abnormal gain we need to transfer from the normal loss account to abnormal gain account. Sales value of abnormal gain. So abnormal gain, we know 108 units. In process C, scrap value is 5 rupees. So abnormal gain 108 units into 5 rupees, that is 540. So this amount we need to transfer from the normal loss account to abnormal gain account. So what we do is, in the normal loss account, we credit as saying abnormal gain 108 units. The value would be 540. Sales value of abnormal gain. So now you can see in the normal loss account, both sides are telling both volume as well as the values. So that is the answer to 2.2. Now I can go to 2.3, which is gain account. That is in 2.3. Let me check the question again. Prepare abnormal gain or loss account. So basically it is saying to prepare one account to show both abnormal gain as well as the abnormal loss. So as we know, in process B, there's an abnormal loss. In process C, there's an abnormal gain. So let's see how to do this. So I can call this account to represent both abnormal loss or gain account. We can show both abnormal loss as well as gain in the same account, abnormal loss or gain account. Let me first erase this previous data. Okay, as we know, from process B, there is an abnormal loss, and from process C, there's an abnormal gain. So what I'm going to do now is first to enter these records in the abnormal loss or gain account. So in process B, there's an abnormal loss. Process B account is credited with the abnormal loss. Abnormal loss account, therefore, we need to debit. So I can say here process B, the opposite of the same entry. In process B, abnormal loss is 45, value is 900. So process B account credit, abnormal loss account debit. In process C, there's the opposite. There's an abnormal gain. So process C account debit, abnormal gain account credit. Process C, abnormal gain is 108 units and the value is 4,104. We have recorded the abnormal loss in process B and the abnormal gain in process C. Thereafter, what we can do is we can record the sales proceeds. By selling the abnormal loss in process B, from process B, there's an abnormal loss of 45. So by selling these 45 units at the scrap value of 4 rupees in process B, we can realize a sales value. That sales value we need to debit the bank account and credit the abnormal loss account. So I will say here bank account, volume will be 45. We are selling the abnormal loss, and each unit we are selling at 4 rupees. That is the scrap value in process B. So I'll explain that again. From process B, we have an abnormal loss of 45 units. You can see here the value of abnormal loss is 900 rupees, and each loss unit or each scrap value we can sell for 4 rupees. So by selling 45 units, we can realize 180 rupees. The double entry for that is bank account debit and the abnormal loss account credit. So here we have recorded the value of abnormal loss. We are losing 45 units and the value of the loss is at the rate of 20 rupees, 900. And by selling each of these 45 units, we are realizing 180. For that 180, the double entry is bank account debit and the abnormal loss account credit. So in the same way, we can record the entry which is arising from the normal loss account from the for the abnormal gain. You can see from the normal loss account from the normal loss account for the abnormal gain, there's an entry to the credit side in the normal loss account. So the abnormal gain account will be debited by the same value. We can say from the normal loss account, we are getting 108 units, and the corresponding value would be 540. So now we can reconcile the abnormal loss or gain account. In this account, if you see, in the debit side, the volume is 153. The credit side, the volume is also 153. So volumes are 10 in. The debit side, the value is 1,440. Credit side, the value is 4,284, which means the credit side value is more than the debit side value. There's a balance arising in the debit side, which is the difference between 4,284 and 1,480. So the difference is 2,844. This is the profit that we need to transfer to the profit and loss account. Why I say this is a profit? Because abnormal loss or gain account we are debiting and we are crediting to the P&L account. So this is the amount we are transferring to P&L account. Since profit and loss account is credited, this is a net gain. So if you are wondering how we get this net gain, I can do a small reconciliation here. Please look at the reconciliation very carefully. Now in this abnormal loss or gain account, basically I have incorporated the abnormal loss arising from process B, abnormal gain arising from process C. So I can summarize like this. Abnormal loss in process B, that is this value of 900. That is the value of abnormal loss arising from process B. Then from process C, we have an abnormal gain. Abnormal gain from process C. So that value is 4,104. So from process B, we have an abnormal loss. From process C, we have an abnormal gain. The abnormal loss in process B is an additional loss. Therefore, that we can sell at the rate of 4 rupees, which is the scrap value in process B. So I can say scrap value for abnormal loss. Scrap value for abnormal loss in process B. So abnormal loss in process B is abnormal loss in process B is 45 units, and each unit we can sell at 4 rupees, which is the scrap value. So by selling 45 units at 4 rupees, we generate a scrap value of 180 rupees for the abnormal loss in process B. In process C, we have an abnormal gain. It means we don't realize scrap sales value, or we don't realize scrap value for 108 units. So it's a loss, or we can say it's an opportunity cost for the company. The loss sales value, loss scrap sales value, loss scrap sales value, it is an opportunity cost due to abnormal gain in process C. I repeat, in process C, we have an abnormal gain. In other words, our loss is less than the expected loss. Since our loss is less than the expected loss, our scrap sales value is going to reduce. So it's an opportunity cost which is arising due to abnormal gain. So loss sales value due to abnormal gain in process C would be 108 units into the scrap value in process C, 5 rupees. In other words, in process C, we thought each scrap unit we can sell for 5 rupees, but unfortunately in process C, our loss is getting reduced by 108 units. So for the 108 units for which the loss is getting reduced, we are losing an income of 540 rupees. That is loss 108 units multiplied by 5 rupees. So I explained the 4 calculations again. In process B, we have an abnormal loss of 45 units, of which the value is 900. This is a loss. In process C, we have an abnormal gain of 108 units, of which the value is 4104. It is a gain. Due to the abnormal loss in process B, we generate an additional scrap value or additional scrap income of 180. So it is a gain again. Due to the abnormal gain in process C, we are losing a scrap value of 540. It is a loss. So I can calculate the net gain or loss by adding 4140 with 180 and deducting 900 and 540. So as you can see, my net gain is 2844, which is the same answer that you can obtain from the abnormal loss or gain account. Now here I must tell you, the suggested answers given by the CMA Business School for 2.3 is not correct. In the suggested answer, they have only mentioned the abnormal gain, but the examiner is asking both abnormal loss as well as abnormal gain. So you have to show both abnormal loss and abnormal gain in the same account like I have done here. The suggested answer given for 2.3 is therefore incorrect. So don't look at the suggested answer given for 2.3. Other answers are okay, but 2.3 is incorrect. So with this, we complete question number 2. This is the net gain. This is the reconciliation or the explanation for the net gain we are transferring to the profit and loss account from the abnormal loss or gain account. So now we can move into question number 3. In question number 3, the operating statement relating to the latest financial year of Hero Manufacturing Limited is as follows. Sales 22,000 units, direct materials, direct labor, production overheads, all figures are given in rupees thousands. So gross profit, and we are given selling overheads and the net profits. The variable production overheads were 9 rupees per unit, while the variable selling overheads were 11 rupees per unit. You are required to calculate the contribution margin per unit and the margin of safety in units for the latest financial years. It's a question of calculating contribution per unit and the margin of safety. So let's go to the working of this question. So I will start question number 3 on a separate page. I can calculate the, first of all, we are given the volume, sales volume, 22,000 units. For the volume, I can calculate the unit values, selling price, that will be, so I'll repeat the information given in the question. Selling price will be 3,300,000 divided by 22,000. So selling price is 150. Then direct materials 776,000 divided by 22,000. Direct labor would be 374,000 divided by 22,000. Production overheads. In the production overheads, we are told variable reduction overheads were 9 rupees per unit and the variable selling overheads were 11 rupees per unit. So we can say variable reduction overheads. Variable reduction overheads 9 rupees per 1 unit and the variable selling overheads 11 rupees. This is 726,000. So direct material cost per 1 unit 33, direct labor cost 17, variable overheads 9 rupees, variable selling overheads 11 rupees. So total variable cost I can take here. Total variable cost per unit 70 rupees. Therefore contribution per 1 unit, contribution per unit would be 80 rupees. So this is the contribution per 1 unit. Now to calculate the break even, I have to find the fixed cost, which I need to find from the total overhead figure. So total reduction overheads given as 798,000. Production overheads given as 798,000 and total selling overheads given as 1,042,000. From this I can deduct these are total figures. From these total figures I can deduct the variable overheads. So variable reduction overhead per 1 unit we know 9 rupees, that into 22,000 units to get the total value. Variable selling overheads per unit 11 rupees into 22,000 to get the total variable overhead. So now I can get the difference, which will be the fixed cost in each overhead. So fixed production overhead will be 600,000 and fixed selling overhead would be 800,000. In other words, total fixed cost would be 1.4 million. So total fixed cost 1.4 million, contribution per 1 unit 80 rupees. Now I can calculate break even volume, which is, as we know, fixed cost divided by contribution per 1 unit, 17,500. So this is the answer for 3.1. Calculate the contribution margin per unit and the margin of safety. So we'll go to the margin of safety. Margin of safety volume, that would be current volume minus the break-even volume. So current volume is 22,000, break-even volume is 17,500. Sorry, break-even volume is 17,500. Therefore, margin of safety volume is 4,500. That is the answer to 3.1. I'll go back to the question. Part B. The above Hero Manufacturing Limited, same company, the above Hero Manufacturing Limited has a capacity of 30,000 units per year. Management is not happy with the financial performance for the last year, and 2 courses of action for the coming year were proposed in the recent management meeting. The sales manager believed that volume of sales would increase by 30% with the incurrence of 200,000 rupees on advertising. So to increase volume by 30% by spending 200,000 rupees on advertising. Number 2, general manager considered the full capacity could be reached if the selling price were cut by 10%. In addition, the direct material cost would be reduced by 5% following a minor modification of the specification of the plant. So general manager is saying you can achieve the total capacity of 30,000 units. At the moment, their volume is 22,000. So general manager is saying you can achieve the capacity of 30,000 if you reduce the selling price by 10%, and also he believes direct material cost can be reduced by 5%. So let's evaluate what is going to happen to the company compared to the current scenario. So with the current scenario, and also we have two alternatives, we in total have three options to evaluate. So 3.2. So I can say here, current situation, proposal 1 and proposal 2. So volume in the current situation is 22,000, and in proposal 1, sales manager believes volume can be increased by 30% by incurring another 200,000 rupees on advertising. So basically, in proposal 1, volume will be 30% more than 22,000, that is 28,600. In proposal 2, volume will be the capacity, which is 30,000. Now I can put the details from my previous working. Selling price, in the current situation, selling price is 150. In proposal 1 also, selling price is same, no change. In proposal 2, the selling price will decrease by 10%. In proposal 2, selling price will decrease by 10%. In other words, from the current selling price, new selling price will be 90%. Variable cost. Current variable cost is 70 rupees per 1 unit. In proposal 1 also, there is no change in the variable cost, 70 rupees per 1 unit. In proposal 2, the general manager believes direct material cost can be reduced by 5%. He believes direct material cost can be reduced by 5%. So I can do a small work in here. Current direct material cost is 17 rupees. New direct material cost will be 95% of 17 rupees. That will be 16.15. General manager believes material cost can be reduced by 5%. So from the current value of 17 rupees, sorry, current direct material cost is not 17, current direct material cost is 33 rupees. So general manager believes it can be reduced by 5%. So new direct material cost would be 95% of the current cost. That is 31.35. In other words, variable cost reduction. Variable cost reduction is going to be the difference between the two material cost, 1 rupees and 65 cents. I repeat, current direct material cost is 33. General manager believes direct material cost can be reduced by 5%. So new direct material cost will be 95% of the previous direct material cost. So therefore, new direct material cost is going to be 31.35, which indicates a reduction of 1 rupee and 65 cents. Therefore, variable cost of the company in proposal 2 is going to reduce by 1 rupee and 65 cents. Right. So now we can go to fixed. I will first calculate the total contribution before moving into fixed cost. Total contribution. So in the current situation, total contribution would be the difference between selling price and variable cost into the current volume. So I can repeat for option 1 and option 2, or proposal 1 and proposal 2. So in proposal 1, contribution would be 2,288,000, since the volume is going to increase by 30% without a change in the selling price or the variable cost. In proposal 2, the contribution is going to be 1,999,500, since the variable cost is going to decrease by 1 rupee and 65 cents, and also selling price is going to decrease by 15 rupees. So these are the new contributions. I can now go to the two fixed cost. Remember, we have two fixed cost: fixed production overheads and fixed selling overheads. So for the current scenario, there is no change in these two costs. Fixed production overhead is 600,000 rupees and fixed selling overheads is 800,000 rupees. In proposal 1, there is no change in the fixed production overheads, but fixed selling overheads is going to increase by 200,000 rupees due to additional advertising. In proposal 2, there is no impact to fixed cost. In proposal 2, basically, the volume is going to increase to 30,000 with a reduction of 10% in the selling price, and material cost is going to reduce by 5%. So there is no impact to fixed cost in proposal 2. In other words, the fixed cost will be same as the current fixed cost. Now I can compute profits under each scenario. Current profit would be 360,000 rupees. Profits under proposal 1 would be 688,000, and the profits under proposal 2 would be 599,500. Therefore, out of the two proposals, of course, both proposals compared to the current situation are going to give more profits to the company. Out of the two proposals, the most advantageous proposal is proposal 1, suggested by the marketing manager. So it is asking, prepare the budgeted operating statement for the coming year in columnar format using a contribution margin approach under each alternative, which we did. And also we can give a conclusion also. We can say, out of the two alternatives, proposal 1 suggested by the sales manager is more beneficial for the company. Out of the two alternatives, proposal 1 suggested by the sales manager is more beneficial for the company. That is our answer to 3.2. So with that, we complete question number 3 as well. So in this video lesson, I'm not going to discuss question numbers 4 and 5 in the May 2019 paper. I will stop now. So to go back, in the May 2019 management accounting paper for the operational level, we have discussed first 3 questions, which include 20 multiple choice questions carrying 40 marks. Question number 2, which is about process costing, and question number 3, which is about marginal costing and break even. So I'm going to stop now. Any questions that you may have on the areas that we have discussed in these topics, you can either question through the CMA virtual learning platform, or you can personally WhatsApp me or email me. Thank you very much.